Hello everyone. I totally remembered to unmute myself just now. Move this. And that's the wrong thing to move. My bad. But hopefully you're all having a good day today. There we go. Now it's moved over just a smidge. Here we go. Yay. Yeah, hopefully you're all doing well today. And having a good Friday so far. Let's see. I don't remember how many months it's been since we last read Peter Pan, but we be here. Let me turn on the rain sounds. Make sure they're not too loud too. Did I test this before? Nope. Am I testing it right now? Yep. That's how I always does. If I put it on my screen, as soon as I get off, it's already gone. Let's see if I can get a little bit quieter. But it's not like super loud, but it's like there. I feel like that's too quiet though. Maybe here's okay. But yeah, let me know if the rain is too loud or it's too quiet or whatever, and I will adjust it. But for now, I'll leave it where it's at right now. Hey, hello everyone, welcome to stream. Today we're reading Peter Pan chapter 9. Yes. I don't even remember where we left off, so this will be fun. The chapter is called The Never Bird, so that's kind of I was reading the previous chapter paragraph, and Peter's just like, to die will be an awfully big adventure, and I'm like, that's ominous. But we will start on chapter 9, The Never Bird. Woohoo! The last sound Peter heard before he was quite alone were the mermaids retiring one by one to their bedchambers under the sea. He was too far away to hear their doors shut, but every door in the coral caves where they live rings a tiny bell when it opens or closes, as in all the nicest houses on the mainland, and he heard the bells. Steadily, the waters rose till they were nibbling at his feet, and to pass the time until they made their final gulp, he watched the only thing on the lagoon. He thought it was a piece of floating paper, perhaps part of the kite, and wondered idly how long it would take to drift ashore. Presently, he noticed, as an odd thing, that it was undoubtedly out upon the lagoon with some definitive purpose. rose fighting the tide and sometimes winning. And when it won, Peter, always sympathetic to the weaker side, could not help clapping. It was such a gallant piece of paper. It was not really a piece of paper. It was the Neverbird, making desperate efforts to reach Peter on the nest by working her wings in a way she had learned since the nest fell into the water. She was able, to some extent, to guide her strange craft. But by the time Peter recognized her, she was very exhausted. She had come to save him, to give him her nest, though there were eggs in it. I rather wonder at the bird, for though he had been nice to her, he had also sometimes tormented her. I can suppose only that, like Miss Darling and the rest of them, she was melted because he had all his first teeth. She called out to him what she had come for, and he called out to her what she was doing there. But of course, neither of them understood the other's language. In fanciful stories, people can talk to the birds freely, and I wish, for the moment, I could pretend that this were such a story, and say that Peter replied intelligently to the Neverbird. But the truth is best, and I want to tell you only what really happened. Well, not only could they not understand each other, but they forgot their manners. I want you to get into the nest, the bird called, speaking as slowly and distinctively as possible. And then you can drift ashore. But I am too tired to bring it any nearer. So you must try to swim to it. What are you quacking about? Peter answered. Why don't you just let the nest drift as usual? I want you, the bird said, and repeated it all over. This poor bird. Then Peter tried slow and distinct. What are you quacking about? And so on. The Neverbird became irritated. They have very short tempers. You dunder-headed little jay, she screamed. Why don't you do as I tell you? Peter felt that she was calling him names, and at a venture, he retorted hotly, So are you. Then rather curiously, they both snapped out the same remark. And my cat is here to say hello. Hi, Mickey. My mic. Mickey. Mickey. Come here. Why are cats like this? Streamers that have cats struggles. The struggles. Especially when you have a needy cat like Mickey. Please, Mickey, let me stream in peace. At least one of my cats just sleeps all day. Mickey is back again. Hi, Miki. 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 I'm gonna turn off my keyboard real quick just in case she steps on my keyboard and everything goes goodbye. Miki plays. I'm trying to stream, kitty. Yes, yes, I see you. I think she got confused. She went, she woke up and then went into the bedroom and didn't see I was there and was like, wait a minute. And then came out here like, wait. And now she's just licking my hands. My cat is weird. She's very needy. Okay, let's see. Where? At least she's not like headbutting me, so I can actually read now. She's just licking my hand at the moment. I spoke too soon. Help. Okay, they were snap at each other. Oh, they both said shut up. Okay. Nevertheless, the bird was determined to save him if she could, and by one last mighty effort, she propelled the nest against the rock. Then up she flew, deserting her eggs, so as to make her meaning clear. Then at last he understood, and clutched the nest and waved his thanks to the bird as she fluttered overhead. It was not to receive his thanks, however, that she hung there in the sky. It was not even to watch him get into the nest. It was to see what he did with her eggs. There were 2 large white eggs, and Peter lifted them up and reflected. The bird covered her face with her wings so as not to see the last of them, but she could not help peeping between the feathers. I forget whether I have told you that there was a stave on the Mickey. My cat was just fine, just, licking my hand, and now she wants to headbutt me. Help. Hey, you. Hey, you with the cute fist. Stop. Stop. Okay. Maybe she stopped. Okay, where was I? Oh, here. Driven into it by some buccaneers of long ago to mark the site of buried treasure, the children had discovered the glittering hoard, and, when in a mischievous mood, used to fling showers of mortars, diamonds, pearls, and pieces of 8 to the gulls, who pounced upon them for food, and then flew away, raging at the scurvy trick that had been played upon them. The stave was still there, and on it stark. Sorry. Miki decided to headbutt me again. Please let me stream in peace, kitty. No. Let me stream in peace. Let's see. Gustav was still there, and on it Starkey had hung his hat, and deep tarpaulin, watertight, with a broad brim. Peter put the eggs into this hat and set it on the lagoon. It floated beautifully. The Neverbird saw at once what he was up to, and screamed her admiration of him. And alas, I do not want cat fur in my water, thank you. Nikki, why you like this right now? She's normally asleep by now. I don't know why she's awake. Silly kitty. Peter crowed his agreement with her. Then he got into the nest, reared the stove in it at the mast, and hung up his shirt for a sail. At the same moment, the bird fluttered down upon the hat, and once more sat snugly on her eggs. She drifted in one direction, and he was borne off in another, both cheering. Of course, when Peter landed, he beached his bark in a place where the bird would easily find it. But the hat was such a great success that she had abandoned the nest. It drifted about till it went to pieces, and often Starkey came to the shore of the lagoon, and with many bitter feelings watched the bird sitting on his hat. As we shall not see her again, it may be worth mentioning here that all never birds now build in that shape of nest, with a broad brim on which the youngsters take on airing. Great were the rejoicings when Peter reached the home under the ground, almost as soon as Wendy, who had been carried hither and thither by the kite. Every boy had adventures to tell, but perhaps the biggest adventure of all was that they were several hours late for bed. This so infatuated them that they did various dodgy things to get staying up still longer, such as demanding bandages, but Wendy, though glorying in having them all home again safe and sound, was scandalized by the lateness of the hour and cried, "To bed, to bed," in a voice that had to be obeyed. The next day, however, she was awfully tender and gave out bandages to everyone, and they played till bedtime at limping about and carrying their arms in slings. Eat the biko! Hoi hoi! Happy happy! That chapter was all over the place because Miki keeps headbutting me. I'm like, why are you like this? Normally she's asleep at this time, so I'm like, why? We'll probably end up doing maybe 3 or 4 chapters today, depending how long it takes, I guess. We'll see, we'll see. But hey, my happy Friday. Yee, happy Friday. Happy Friday. Friday. Now we're on chapter 10. Though I think this should bring you to the right chapter? Question mark. But if you want to follow along, I'm on chapter 10, which is X. And Miki has decided to shove her face in my mouth. Can you not, kitty? Sheesh. On the floor. Miki's being extremely needy today, and I don't know why. So sorry. That's why I don't really do many ASMR streams, because most of the time I'll be like, oh, it's fine, and then she'll wake up. And I'm like, oh no. Because Maki is pretty chill. If she wakes up, she'll just like lay next to me or like on my desk. But Miki will just be like, wah, wah, wah. Like I forget an alarm, and then keep headbutting me or licking my arm. And I'm like, hello. That's what we talk about all the time. Where it's like, I swear, we did we get dogs by chance? They're not really cats, they're dogs. Anyway, we're on chapter 10, which is X, the happy home. One important result of the brush of the lagoon was that it made the Redskins their friends. Peter had saved Tiger Lily from a dreadful fate, and now there was nothing she and her braves would not do for him. All night they sat above, keeping watch over the home under the ground and awaiting the big attack by the pirates, which obviously could not be much longer delayed. Even by day, they hung about, smoking the pipe of peace, the pipe of peace, and looking almost as if they wanted tidbits to eat. They called Peter the Great White Father, frustrating themselves before him, and he liked this tremendously, so that it was not really good for him. The Great White Father, he would say to them, in a very lordly manner, as they grovelled at his feet, is glad to see the canny warriors protecting his wigwam from the pirates. Me, Tiger Lily, that lovely creature would reply, Peter Pan saved me. Me, his very nice friend. Me no let pirate hurt him. She was far too pretty to cringe in this way, but Peter thought it his due, and he would answer condescendingly, it is good. Peter Pan has spoken. Always when he said, Peter Pan has spoken, it meant that they must now shut up, and they accepted it humbly in that spirit. But they were by no means so respectful to the other boys, whom they looked upon, and Miki is stepping on my mouse. Hey! Hey, Kitty, why? Why you like this? I literally stepped in front of my screen as I'm about to read the next line. I'm like, hello. They said how do to them and things like that, and that annoyed the boys. Oh, and what annoyed the boys was that Peter seemed to think this all right. Secretly, Wendy sympathized with them a little, but she was far too loyal to listen to any complaints against Father. Father knows best, she always said, whatever her private opinion must be. Her private opinion was that the Redskins did not call her a squawk, whatever that means. We have now reached the evening that was to be known among them as the Night of Nights, because of its adventures and their upshot. The day, as if quietly gathering its forces, had been almost uneventful, and now the Redskins in their blankets were at their posts above, while below, the children were having their evening meal. All except Peter, who had gone out to get the time. The way he got the time on the island was to find the crocodile and then stay near him till the clock struck. Crocodile ate the freaking clock. The meal happened to be a make-believe tea, and they sat around the board, guzzling in their greed. And really, but with their chatter and recognitions, the noise, as Wendy said, was positively deafening. To be sure, she did not mind noise, but she simply did not have them grabbing things and then excusing themselves by saying that Tooties had pushed their elbow. There was a fixed rule that they must never hit back at meals, but should refer the matter of dispute to Wendy by raising the right arm politely and saying, "I complain of so-and-so." But what usually happened was that they forgot to do this and did it too much. "Silence," cried Wendy, when the 20th time she had told them they were not to speak at once. "Is your mug empty?" "Slightly, darling." "Not quite empty," Slightly said, after looking into an imaginary mug. "He hasn't even begun to drink his milk," Nibs interposed. This was telling, and Slightly seized his chance. "I complain of Nibs," he cried promptly. John, however, held up his hand first. "Well, John, may I sit in Peter's chair, as he is not here?" "Sit in father's chair, John?" Wendy was scandalized. "Certainly not." "He is not really our father," John answered. "He didn't even know how a father does till I showed him." This was grumbling. "We complain of John," cried the twins. Doodles held up his hand. He was so much of the humblest of them. Indeed, he was the only humble one, that Wendy was especially gentle with him. "I don't suppose," Toodles said differently, "then I could be father?" "No, Toodles." Once Toodles began, which is not very often, he had a silly way of going on. "As I can't be father," he said heavily, "I don't suppose, Michael, you will let me be baby?" "No, I won't," Michael rapped out. He was already in his blanket. "As I can't be baby," Toodles said, getting heavier and heavier and heavier. "Do you think I could be a twin?" "No, indeed," replied the twins. It's awfully difficult to be a twin." "As I can't be anything important," said Toodles, "would any of you like to see me do a trick?" "No," they all replied. Rip. Then at last he stopped. "I hadn't really any hope," he said. The hateful telling broke out again. Slightly is coughing on the table. The twins began with cheesecakes. Curly is taking both butter and honey. Nibs is speaking with his mouth full. I complain of the twins. I complain of Curly. I complain of Nibs. Oh dear, cried Wendy. "I'm sure I sometimes think that spinsters are to be envied." She told them to clear away and sat down to her work basket. A heavy load of stockings in every knee with a hole in it as usual. "Wendy," remonstrated Michael, "I'm too big for a cradle." "I must have somebody in a cradle," she said almost tartly. "And you're the littlest. A cradle is such a nice, homey thing to have about a house." While she stewed, they played around her. Such a group of happy faces and dancing limbs lit up by that romantic fire. It had become a very familiar scene. This, in the home under the ground, but we are all looking on it for the last time. There was a step above, and Wendy, you may be sure, was the first to recognize it. Children, I hear your father's step. He likes you to meet him at the door. Above, the redskins crouched before Peter. Watch well, braves. I have spoken. And then, as so often before, the children dragged him from his tree, as so often before, but never again. He had brought nuts for the boys, as well as the correct time for Wendy. Peter, you just spoiled them, you know, Wendy simpered. Ah, old lady, said Peter, hanging up his gun. It was me told him mothers are called old lady, Michael whispered to Curly. Oh, man. Imagine someone actually did that nowadays. Man, you just ask him to get smacked. I complain of Michael, said Curly instantly. The first twin came to Peter. Father, we want to dance. Dance away, my little man, said Peter, who was in high good humor. But we want to dance. We want you to dance. Peter was really the best dancer among them, but he pretended to be scandalized. Me? My old bones would rattle. And Mummy too. What? Cried Wendy. The mother is such an artful dance. But on a Saturday night, slightly insinuated. It was not really Saturday night. At least it may have been, for they had long lost count of the days. But always, if they wanted to do anything special, they said this was Saturday night, and then they did it. Of course it is Saturday night, Peter, Wendy said, relenting. People of our figure, Wendy. But it's only among our own, but Jenny. True, true. So they were told they could dance. They must put on their nighties first. Ah, old lady, Peter said, aside to Wendy, warming himself by the fire and looking down at her as she sat turning a heel. There is nothing more pleasant of an evening for you and me when the day's toll is over than to rest by the fire with the little ones nearby. It is sweet, Peter, isn't it? Wendy said, frightfully gratified. Peter, I think Curly has your nose. Michael takes after you. But he looked at her uncomfortably, blinking. You know, like one not sure whether he was awake or asleep. Peter, what is it? I was thinking, he said, a little scared. It is only make-believe, isn't it? That I am their father. Oh, yes, Wendy said primly. You see, he continued, it would make me seem so old to be their real father. But they are ours, Peter, yours and mine. But not really, Wendy. Not if you don't wish it, she replied, and she distinctly heard his sigh of relief. Peter, she asked, trying to speak firmly, what are your exact feelings for me? Those of a devoted son, Wendy. I thought so, she said, and went and sat by herself at the extreme end of the room. Lily is just the same. There's something she wants to be to me, but she says it is not my mother. No, indeed it is not, Wendy replied, with rightful emphasis. Now we know why she was prejudiced against the Redskins. Then what is it? It isn't for a lady to tell. Oh, very well, Peter said. Perhaps Tinkerbell will tell me. Yes, Tinkerbell will tell you, Wendy retorted scornfully. She is an abandoned little creature. Here, Tink, who was in her bedroom, eavesdropping, squeaked out something impudent. She says she glories in being abandoned, Peter interpreted. He had a sudden idea. Perhaps Tink wants to be my mother. You silly ass, cried Tinkerbell in a passion. She had said it so often that Wendy needed no translation. I almost agree with her, Wendy snapped. Fancy Wendy snapping. But she had been much tired, and she little knew what was to happen before the night was out. If she had known, she would not have snapped. None of them knew. Perhaps it was best not to know. Their ignorance gave them one more glad hour. And as it was to be their last hour on the island, let us rejoice that there was 60 glad minutes in it. They sang and danced in their nightgowns. Such a deliciously creepy song it was, in which they pretended to be frightened at their own shadows, little witting that so soon shadows would close in upon them, from whom they would shrink in real fear. So uproariously was the dance, and how they buffeted each other out of it. It was a pillow fight rather than a dance, and when it was finished, the pillows insisted on one bout more, like partners who know what they may never meet again. And the stories they told before it was time for Wendy's goodnight story. Even Slightly tried to tell a story that night, but the beginning was so fearfully dull, that it appalled not only the others but himself, and he said gloomily, Yes, it is a dull beginning. I say, let us pretend that it is the end. And then, at last, they all got into bed for Wendy's story. The story they loved best. The story Peter hated. Usually, when she began to tell this story, he left the room or put his hands over his ears. And possibly, if he had done either of those things, this time they might all still be on the island. But tonight, he remained on his stool, and we shall see what happened. At the end of chapter 10. Chapter 11 is like super long. I was like, aw. I was scrolling through it just now. I was like, how long is this next one? I was like, that's really long. I forgot how long these chapters are. Because they don't seem that long until, like, I start scrolling through them as I'm reading, and I'm like, damn, it's long. Let's see, how many chapters are there in general? 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. There's 17 chapters. Oh my gosh. Yeah, there's a lot of them. I guess I'll read Wendy's story then. We might just end up doing like 3 at a time, it seems, because they're really long. Oh, look, they're so long. Okay, let's go back to, where is it? This chapter. Okay. Oh, it seems really long because I have it in reader mode. So it's like all scrunched together. And I was like, oh, okay. It's not as long as I thought, but it's okay. Let's drink a little water before we continue the next one. Ugh. I'm also, my arms are sore from yesterday. Because yesterday, when I went to the gym, it was upper body day. And I was just like, oh, I'm gonna feel sore tomorrow. And that is today. Oh my gosh. Just gotta stretch a bit. Okay. Chapter 11. Wendy's story. Listen then, said Wendy, settling down to her story, with Michael at her feet and 7 boys in the bed. There was once a gentleman. I had rather he had been a lady, Curly said. I wish he had been a white rat, said Nibs. Quiet. Their mother admonished in them. There was a lady also, and... Oh, Mummy, cried the first twin. You mean that there is a lady also, don't you? She is not dead, is she? Oh, no. I am awfully glad she isn't dead, said Toodles. Are you glad, John? Of course I am. Are you glad, Nibs? Rather. Are you glad, twins? We are glad. Oh dear, sighed Wendy. A little less noise there, Peter called out, determined that she should have fair play. However beastly a story might be in his opinion. The gentleman's name, Wendy continued, was Mr. Darling, and her name was Miss Darling. So it's about their actual parents. Okay. I knew them, John said, to annoy others. I knew them, said Michael, rather doubtfully. I think I knew them, my bad. They were married, you know, explained Wendy. And what do you think they had? White rats, cried Nibs, inspired. No. It's awfully puzzling, said Toodles, who knew the story by heart. Quiet, Toodles. They had 3 descendants. What is descendants? Well, you are one, twin. Did you hear that, John? I am a descendant. Descendants are only children, said John. Oh dear, sighed Wendy. Now, these 3 children had a faithful nurse called Nana, but Mr. Darling was angry with her and chained her up in the yard, and so all the children flew away. It's an awfully good story, said Nibs. They flew away, Wendy continued, to the Neverland. Oh, to the Neverland where the lost children are. I just thought they did, Curly broke in excitedly. I don't know how it is, but I just thought they did. Oh, Wendy, cried Toodles. Was one of the lost children called Toodles? Yes, he was. I am in a story. Hurrah! I am in a story, Nibs. Hush, now I want you to consider the feelings of the unhappy parents with all their children flown away. Oh, they all moaned. though they were not really considering the feelings of the unhappy parents. Think of the empty beds. It's awfully sad, the first twin said cheerfully. I don't see how it can have a happy ending, said the second twin. Do you, Nibs? I'm frightfully anxious. If you knew how great is a mother's love, Wendy told them triumphantly, you would have no fear. She had now come to the part that Peter hated. I do like a mother's love, said Toodles, hitting Nibs with the pillow. Do you like a mother's love, Nibs? I do just, said Nibs, hitting back. I love how they're just casually having a pillow fight while Wendy's trying to tell a story. You see, Wendy said complacently, our heroine knew that the mother would always leave the window open for her children to fly back by. So they stayed away for years and had a lovely time. Did they ever go back? Let us now, said Wendy, raising herself up for her finest effort, take a peep into the future, and they all gave themselves the twist that makes peeps into the future easier. Years have rolled by, and who is this elegant lady of uncertain age alighting at London Station? Oh, Wendy, who is she? Cried Nibs, every bit as excited as if he didn't know. Can it be? Yes. No. It is. The fair Wendy. Oh. And who are the two noble portly figures accompanying her, now grown to man's estate? Can it be John and Michael? They are. Oh. See, dear brothers, says Wendy, pointing upwards. There is a window still standing open. Ah, now we are rewarded for our sublime faith in a mother's love. So up they flew to their mummy and daddy, and pen cannot describe the happy scene, over which we draw a veil. That was the story, and they were pleased with it as the fair narrator herself. Everything just as it should be, you see. Off we skip like the most heartless things in the world, which is what children are, but so attractive, and we have an entirely selfish time. And then when we have the need of special attention, we nobly return for it, confident that we shall be rewarded instead of smacked. So great indeed was their faith in a mother's love that they felt they could afford to be callous for a bit longer. But there was one there who knew better, and when Wendy finished, he uttered a hollow groan. What is it, Peter? She cried, running to him, thinking he was ill. She felt him solicitously lower down than his chest. Where is it, Peter? It isn't that kind of pain, Peter replied darkly. Then what kind is it? Wendy, you are wrong about mothers. They all gathered round him in a fright. So alarming was his agitation, and with defiant candor, he told them what he had hitherto concealed. Long ago, he said, I thought, like you, that my mother would always keep the window open for me, so I stayed away for moons and moons and moons, and then flew back. But the window was barred, for mother had forgotten all about me, and there was another little boy sleeping in my bed. I am not sure that this was true, but Peter thought it was true, and it scared them. Are you sure mothers are like that? Yes. So this was the truth about mothers, the toads. Still, it is best to be careful, and no one knows so quickly as a child when he should give in. Wendy, let us go home, cried John and Michael together. Yes, she said, clutching them. Not tonight? Asked the lost boys, bewildered. They knew in what they called their hearts that one can get on quite well without a mother, and that is only the mothers who think you can't. At once, Woody replied resolutely, for the horrible thought had come to her. Her house mother is in half mourning by this time. This dread made her forgetful of what must be Peter's feelings, and she said to him rather sharply, Peter, will you make the necessary arrangements? If you wish it, he replied, as coolly as if he had asked him to pass the nuts. Not so much as a sorry to lose you between them. If she did not mind the parting, he was going to show her. Was Peter, then neither did he. But of course, he cared very much, and he was so full of wrath against grown-ups who, as usual, were spoiling everything, that as soon as he got inside his tree, he breathed intentionally quick, short breaths at the rate of about 5 to a second. He did this because there is a saying in the Neverland that every time you breathe, a grown-up dies. And Peter was killing them off vindictively as fast as possible. Then, having given the necessary instructions to the Redskins, he returned to the home, where an unworthy scene had been enacted in his absence. Panic-stricken at the thought of losing Wendy, the lost boy had advanced upon her threateningly. It'll be worse than before she came, they cried. We shan't let her go. Let's keep her prisoner. Hey, chain her up. In her extremity, an instinct told her to which of them to turn. Toodles, she cried, I appeal to you. Was it not strange? She appealed to Toodles, quite the silliest one. Gladly, however, did Toodles respond. For the moment, he dropped his silliness and spoke with dignity. I am just Toodles, he said, and nobody minds me. The first, who does not behave to Wendy like an English gentleman, I'll blood him severely. He drew back his hanger, and for that instant, his sun was at noon. The others held back uneasily. Then Peter returned, and they saw at once that they would get no support from him. He would keep no girl in the Neverland against her will. Wendy, he said, striding up and down, I've asked the Redskins to guide you through the woods. As flying tires you sow. Thank you, Peter. Then, he continued, in a short, sharp voice of one accustomed to be obeyed, Tinkerbell will fly across the sea. Wake her up, Nibs. Nibs had knocked twice before he got an answer. Though Tink had really been sitting up in bed listening for some time. Sorry, I thought Mickey was behind me and I was about to roll back. I was like, kidding, no. because I was too close to my desk. So I was gonna scoot back a bit so I could stretch my legs out. And I was like, where's my cat? She's in the other bed. Okay, cool. Let's see, where are we? Oh, Tinkerbell will take you across the sea. Wake her, Nibs. Nibs had to knock twice before he got an answer, though Tink had really been sitting up in bed listening for some time. Who are you? How dare you? Go away, she cried. We are to get up, Tink, Nibs called, and take Winnie on a journey. Of course, Tink had been delighted to hear that Wendy was going, but she was jolly well determined not to be her courier, and she said so in still more offensive language. And she pretended to be asleep again. She says she won't, Nibs exclaimed. Whereupon Peter went sternly toward the young lady's chamber. Tink, he rapped out, if you don't get up and dress up once, I will open the curtains and then we shall all see you in your negligee. This made her leap to the floor. I said I wasn't getting up, she cried. In the meantime, the boys were gazing very forlornly at Wendy, not equipped with John and Michael for the journey. By this time, they were dejected, not merely because they were about to lose her, but also because they felt that she was going off somewhere, going off to something nice to which they had not been invited. Novelty was beckoning to them, as usual, creating them with a nobler feeling. Wendy melted. Dear ones, she said, if you will all come with me, I feel almost sure I can get my father and mother to adopt you. The invitation was meant specifically for Peter, but each of the boys was thinking exclusively of himself, and at once they jumped with joy. But won't they think us rather a handful? Nibs asked in the middle of his jump. Oh no, said Wendy, rapidly thinking it out. It will only mean having a few beds in the drawing room. They can be hidden behind the screens on first Thursdays. Peter, can we go? They all cried. They took it for granted that if they went, he would go also. But really, they scarcely cared. Those children are ever ready, when novelty knocks, to desert their dearest ones. All right, Peter replied with a bitter smile, and immediately they rushed to get their things. And now, Peter, Wendy said, thinking she had put everything right, I am going to give you your medicine before you go. She looked to give them medicine, and doubtfully gave them too much. Of course, it was only water, but it was out of a bottle, and she always shook the bottle and counted the drops, which gave it a certain medicinal quality. On this occasion, however, she did not give Peter his drops, for just as she had prepared it, she saw a look on his face that made her heart sink. Get your things, Peter, she cried. No, he answered, pretending indifference. I'm not going with you, Wendy. Yes, Peter. No. To show that her departure would leave him unmoved, he skipped up and down the room, playing gaily on his heartless pipes. She had to run about after him, but it was rather undignified. To find your mother, she coaxed. Now, if Peter had ever quite had a mother, he no longer missed her. He could do very well without one. He had thought them out, I remembered only their bad points. No, no, he told Wendy. Perhaps she would say I was old, and I just want always to be a little boy and to have fun. But Peter, no. And so the others had to be told, Peter isn't coming. Peter not coming? They gazed blankly at him, their sticks over their backs, and on each stick a bundle. Their first thought was that if Peter was not going, he had probably changed his mind about letting them go. Though he was far too proud for that. If you find your mothers, he said darkly, I hope you like them. The awful cynicalism of this made an uncomfortable impression, and most of them began to look rather doubtful. After all, their faces said, were they not noodles to want to go? Now then, cried Peter. No fuss, no blubbering. Goodbye, Wendy. And he held out his hand cheerily, quite as if they must really go now. For he had something important to do. She had to take his hand, and there was no indication that he would prefer a thimble. You'll remember about changing your flannels, Peter, she said, lingering over him. She was always so particular about their flannels. Yes. And you'll take your medicine? Yes. That seemed to be everything, and an awkward pause followed. Peter, however, was not the kind that breaks down before other people. Are you ready, Tinkerbell? He cried out. Aye. Then lead the way. Tink darted up the nearest tree, but no one followed her. For it was at this moment that the pirates had made their dreadful attack upon the redskins. Above, where all had been so still, the air was rent with the shrieks and the clash of steel. Below, there was dead silence. Mouths opened and remained open. Wendy fell on her knees, but her arms were extended toward Peter. All arms were extended to him, as if suddenly blown in his direction. They were beseeching him mutely not to desert them. As for Peter, he seized his sword, the same he thought he had slain Barbecue with, and lust of battle was in his eye. And that's the end of that chapter. So we got to chapter 11 today? Yeah, 11. So we did 9, 10, and 11 today. Let's go. Making sure I save this properly. Okay. Is saved for the next time I read. Let's see, announcements. Next week, I'm not really sure if I'll stream at all next week because it's American Thanksgiving and schedules will be kind of all over the place. Though I will be, I think Wade is streaming it, question mark. Wade's getting a couple of our friends together to play Widget. I might stream that on my gaming channel. I haven't decided yet. If I want to at least stream that, because I'm not streaming at all next week. Is what I'm thinking. Maybe. We'll see. I'll decide what I want to do after stream today. I don't want to think about it right now. Brain is mush. Let's see. I didn't have a redirect set up. Oop. Hold on. See if any friendos are alive today. Redirect. Nope, none of my friends are alive at the moment. But it's supposed to be some. Well, maybe this one because this is scheduled for today. So maybe they're setting up stream. Who knows? But will redirect to my friend Hershey. Like they're playing D&D, so that's fun. That'll probably be a really long stream too. But yeah, I'll post a schedule on Sunday along with the ASMR roleplay I'll be posting on Sunday. And we'll see what we decide to do next week. For the moment, I'm not sure. But hopefully you enjoyed Peter Pan, and we'll see you next time. Until then, bye-bye.